Hello everybody and welcome to today's review of The Last Duel. It is the new film directed by Ridley Scott starring Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Jodie Comer, and Ben Affleck. The film is based on a true story of the last judicially sanctioned duel that occurred in France in 1386. Jean de Garouge, played by Matt Damon, accuses the squire Jacques Lecris, played by Adam Driver, of raping his wife, Lady Marguerite, who is played by Jodie Comer. When he initially brings the attack to trial, the Count Pierre, played by Ben Affleck, immediately throws the case away simply because he is friends with Lecris and he doesn't want to see his friend's name getting dragged through the mud. However, when de Garouge appeals to the King of France, he is granted a trial by combat. Now, for those of you who watched Game of Thrones, you would know a trial by combat is essentially a duel to the death, and whoever wins this duel is seen in the eyes of God as the innocent party. Now, this is where the stakes are high, because if de Garouge loses this fight, his wife will be burned at the stake for being a liar. It's messed up. But hey, that's how they did it in the 14th century, and that was the last time that they did it, apparently. But unlike what the title suggests, the movie is not so much about the duel, but rather the events that took place that led to the duel itself. And it's told in 3 different chapters. Each chapter is told from a different perspective. Essentially, we are seeing a series of events replayed 3 times, but in 3 different perspectives. And the events are unfolded like this. Jean de Garouge and Jacques Lecris meet on the field of battle. They become friends, but as the years roll on, we see them have a fallout simply because their careers took different directions. Jacques Lecris actually made his way up the ladder in the courts of France, whereas Jean de Garouge was struggling to hold on to his estate and ends up marrying Lady Marguerite. And when the 3 characters meet each other in person, Jacques Lecris is immediately taken by Jean's wife. He lusts after her, and when she is finally left alone in her own house, he enters and rapes her. Now, the first chapter is told from Jean's perspective. And in that perspective, Jean paints himself as this chivalrous, hard-working man who doesn't get enough credit for his services. But then when we get to chapter 2, it takes an interesting turn. Yes, we see the same events unfold before us again, but Jacques Lecris remembers it differently. He sees Jean as this prideful, self-absorbed man who is very temperamental and doesn't treat his wife very well, which in his mind gave him the excuse to pursue Lady Marguerite in the first place. He also assumes that Lady Marguerite was sending him signals, thus making him believe that what he did was not rape, but actually just them unable to control their emotions for one another. And by the time we get to chapter 3, which is told from Lady Marguerite's perspective, it is clear that the first 2 versions that we have seen before are completely biased, and that her recollection of the events is probably the more accurate version, simply because out of all 3 of them, Lady Marguerite is the one character who has nothing to gain. Because in that society, women were thought of as property. They had no mind of their own. They had no will of their own. They had no property nor claim to any estate or even their own children. So when Marguerite is attacked and brings the accusation up to her husband sees it as an attack on himself because she is his property. And when he brings this case to trial, it is not a case of rape, but a case of destruction of private property. And I gotta hand it to Jodie Comer. I mean, she did a fantastic job tackling this character. I mean, you can just feel her pain and the isolation that she goes through, because when this trial becomes public, she is immediately shunned by her own friends and family. In the world that they live in, a lot of people see rape as a normal thing, and when she is trying to speak up for herself and seek justice for what was being done to her, they look at her as if she brought shame to the family, even though she's the injured party here. It's crazy. Rather than this being a very glamorous movie about a sword fight, The Last Duel is more of an introspective look at society in that time period in terms of class, gender, politics, corruption, and it also takes a psychological look at the mentality of the people involved in a trial of rape. And when I was done watching this film, I came to the realization that even though times have changed and we're not as barbaric as we were 600 years ago, a lot of people still have that same mentality. I mean, I can't stress enough how thought-provoking this film really is and how super relevant it is to the times we're living in, especially now when things like this are being discussed more openly, and even though we haven't really solved the problem, we are still making efforts to make sure that this doesn't happen. Also, I should mention that how this film was written is very important. The film was written by 3 writers. Each one was tasked to write the point of view of one of the characters. Matt Damon wrote Jean de Carouge's side, Ben Affleck wrote Lacrie's side, and Nicole Holofcener, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, took the side of Marguerite. And I think that was a smart choice because you clearly see the differences between each perspective. I think it is important to get the male and the female perspective because it gives you a better understanding of the situation as a whole. It's also an incredibly directed and well-acted film. I mean, the cast was incredible. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them ended up with Oscar nominations or even wins. It's possible. I mean, I have nothing bad to say, other than one thing. The whole movie takes place in France, and none of these actors are French. In fact, they are speaking in their natural tongues. However, you can hear an upper-class dialect in their voices, but it kind of comes and goes, and so that was kind of weird. Also, watching the same events being played back to me again and again and again seemed a bit monotonous. In fact, it almost slowed the film down. I mean, Ridley Scott, he's a director whose line of work isn't always consistent when it comes to quality. There are times when he would make a bad movie, there are times when he would make an okay movie, but then there are times when he would make a great movie. And I'm happy to say that this is one of his greats. Even though there were times I had issues with the pacing and the dialects were a bit muddled. So I'm gonna give The Last Duel an A-. Thank you for watching my video, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to see you again next time.